When a billionaire's silver sedan dies in front of a small-town mechanic's shop, neither of them knows they're about to break every rule that's kept them safe. She's 30, worth billions, and has never known real love. He's 32, raising 3 kids alone, and has sworn never to risk his heart again. One dinner, one kiss under a streetlight. One father who'll burn it all down to stop them. This is their story. A collision between two broken worlds that shouldn't fit, but somehow do. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The air smelled like motor oil and rain. Adrian Cole wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days, squinting through the grimy window of his repair shop as storm clouds gathered over Briar Glen. It was the kind of late afternoon that made everything feel heavy. The humidity, the silence, the way time seemed to drag when you had nothing to look forward to except picking up your kids from school and microwaving leftovers for dinner. He'd been under the hood of Mrs. Patterson's ancient Buick for the better part of 3 hours, and his back was screaming at him. 32 wasn't old, but some days it felt like 60, especially when you'd spent the last 4 years doing everything alone. The bell above the door chimed. "We're about to close," Adrian called out without looking up, his voice rough from not using it much. He didn't get a lot of walk-ins this late. No response. He straightened, tossing the rag onto his workbench, and turned toward the door. What he saw made him forget about his aching back entirely. A woman stood in the doorway, and she looked like she'd walked straight out of a magazine he'd never be able to afford. Mid-length dark hair fell in perfect waves around her shoulders, not a strand out of place despite the wind picking up outside. She wore a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than his mortgage payment, paired with dark slacks and heels that clicked against his oil-stained concrete floor like a countdown. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Dark, sharp, calculating. The kind of eyes that didn't just see you, they assessed you, cataloged you, decided what you were worth in about 3 seconds flat. She didn't belong here. "I need help," she said, and her voice was smooth, controlled. Not panicked, not even particularly worried, just stating a fact. Adrian glanced past her through the window and saw it. A silver sedan, European make, probably worth more than everything in his shop combined. It sat at an awkward angle in front of his garage, hood slightly raised, hazard lights blinking. "What happened?" he asked, already reaching for his diagnostic kit. "It died," she said simply. "I was passing through, and it just stopped." Adrian grabbed his jacket, more habit than necessity in the muggy weather, and headed outside. The woman followed, her heels clicking behind him in a rhythm that felt too precise, too deliberate for someone whose car had just broken down in the middle of nowhere. He popped the hood fully and leaned in, immediately spotting the problem. "Your alternator's shot," he said, running his hand along the belt. "And looks like your battery's been compensating for a while. You're lucky you made it this far." "How long to fix it?" Adrian checked his watch. 4:15. He had to pick up Emma, Jake, and Sophie by 5:30. "I can get you running temporarily, but you'll need a full replacement. That's a special order part for this model. 2, maybe 3 days." For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not panic, exactly. More like inconvenience. "I have a meeting in the city tomorrow morning," she said. "Then you'll need to rent a car or catch a bus. Next town over has an Enterprise. I can call you a cab." "No." The word came out sharp, then she seemed to catch herself. Her expression smoothed over, back to that careful control. "I mean, is there any way you could prioritize this? I'll pay extra." Adrian straightened, wiping his hands again. He'd heard that before. Rich people always thought money could bend time, skip lines, make the impossible possible. "Lady, I don't care if you pay me triple. I can't make a part appear out of thin air. Best I can do is get you to the next town, maybe rig something temporary, but you're not driving this to the city tomorrow. Not safely." She stared at him for a long moment, and Adrian felt himself being measured again. He didn't look away. "Fine," she said finally. "Do what you can for today. I'll figure out the rest." Adrian nodded and got to work. He was aware of her watching him, not hovering exactly, but present in a way that made the back of his neck prickle. Most people wandered off when he worked, made phone calls, complained about their day. This woman just stood there, silent, observing. "You got a name?" he asked after a while, more to fill the silence than anything else. Selina, she said. Selina Vale. The name didn't ring any bells, but then again, Adrian didn't exactly run in circles where billionaires introduced themselves. Adrian Cole. Welcome to Briar Glen. Population 1,200, best pizza in 3 counties, and absolutely nothing else worth mentioning. You don't like it here? Didn't say that. He tested the connection, frowning. It's home. Not exciting, but it's home. Family here? The question was casual, but Adrian's hand stilled for just a second. My kids. 3 of them. And their mother? There it was. The question everyone asked eventually, usually with that same careful tone, like they were stepping around a landmine. She passed 4 years ago. He kept his voice neutral, factual. Same way he'd said it 100 times before. I'm sorry. Adrian glanced at her. She didn't look sorry, not in that performative hand-over-heart way people usually did. She looked something else, like she understood that sorry didn't fix anything, didn't change anything, and saying it was just a social obligation they both had to get through. Yeah, he said. Me too. He finished the temporary fix in silence, testing the engine until it turned over with a reluctant cough. That'll get you maybe 50 miles. Don't push it, and get this looked at properly as soon as you can. Selina pulled out her wallet. Sleek, leather, the kind that held credit cards that didn't have limits. How much? $60. She handed him 100 without blinking. Keep it. Adrian took the bills, stuffed them in his pocket, and grabbed a business card from his cluttered desk. You change your mind about getting it fixed properly, give me a call. I can have the part here by Wednesday. Selina took the card, studied it for a moment, then looked up at him. Do you have dinner plans tonight? The question caught him so off guard he actually laughed. What? Dinner. You mentioned best pizza in 3 counties. I'd like to try it. Adrian stared at her. You want to have dinner? With me? Yes. Why? She tilted her head slightly, and for the first time, something almost like a smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Because I'm stranded in a town I've never heard of. My car is barely functional, and I haven't had a conversation with someone who doesn't want something from me in approximately 6 months. So yes. Dinner. Unless you have other plans. Adrian should have said no. He had every reason to say no. He didn't know this woman, didn't trust the way she looked at him like he was a puzzle she wanted to solve, didn't need whatever this was, pity, curiosity, boredom, complicating his carefully structured life. But he heard himself say, I have to pick up my kids first. I'll wait. Eat. Angelo's Pizzeria sat on Main Street, wedged between a hardware store and a law office that had been closed for as long as Adrian could remember. Red checkered tablecloths, vinyl booths with duct tape over the cracks, and a jukebox in the corner that still played Sinatra, if you kicked it right. It was 5:45 when Adrian walked in with Emma, Jake, and Sophie trailing behind him, and Selina Vale sitting in a booth near the window. Emma, 8 years old and sharp as a tack, spotted her immediately. Dad, who's that? Someone whose car I fixed, Adrian said, guiding them toward the booth. Be polite. Sophie, 6 and fearless, climbed into the booth first, staring at Selina with unabashed curiosity. You're really pretty. Are you a movie star? Sophie, Adrian warned, but Selina smiled. A real smile this time, not the controlled, polished version from earlier. Not a movie star, but thank you. Jake, 10 and perpetually suspicious of everything, slid in next but didn't say anything. Just watched Selina the way he watched everything new, cautious, measuring, waiting to see if it was a threat. Adrian squeezed in beside him, suddenly aware of how cramped the booth was, how loud his kids were, how out of place Selina looked in her expensive clothes surrounded by pizza grease and plastic menus. This is Emma, Jake, and Sophie, Adrian said. Kids, this is Ms. Vale. Selina is fine, she said, looking at each of them in turn. It's nice to meet you. The waitress, Marie, who'd known Adrian since high school, appeared with menus and a raised eyebrow that Adrian ignored. They ordered 2 large pizzas, and then there was that awkward moment where everyone sat in silence, waiting for someone else to start talking. Emma broke first. What kind of car do you have? A Maserati. Sophie's eyes went wide. Like in the movies? Similar. Is it fast? Very. Can we see it? Sophie, let the woman eat first, Adrian said, but Selena just laughed. After dinner, if your dad says it's okay. 3 pairs of eyes swiveled to Adrian. He sighed. Fine. After dinner. The pizza arrived, and for a while there was blessed silence as everyone ate. Adrian watched Selena navigate the chaos of his children with surprising ease, answering Sophie's endless questions, listening to Emma explain her science project in excruciating detail, even getting a few words out of Jake about the book he was reading. She didn't talk down to them, didn't do that thing adults did where they pretended to care but were obviously just humoring kids. She actually listened. What do you do? Emma asked suddenly. For work, I mean. Selena hesitated just for a second. I run a company. What kind of company? Technology, software development mostly. Like video games? Sometimes, mostly business software. Things that help other companies run more efficiently. That sounds boring, Sophie announced. Adrian nearly choked on his pizza. Sophie, but Selena was laughing again, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. Sometimes it is, but it keeps me busy. Do you have kids? Emma asked. No. Are you married? Emma, Adrian said sharply. That's enough. But Selena met his eyes across the table, something unreadable in her expression. It's fine. No, I'm not married. Why not? Sophie asked. Sophie, I swear to… Because I haven't found the right person yet, Selena said simply. Sophie seemed to accept this, going back to her pizza. But Adrian caught the way Selena's hands tightened slightly around her water glass, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. After dinner, they walked to where Selena had parked the Maserati. Risky, given its condition, but it had made it to the restaurant, and the kids swarmed around it like it was a museum exhibit. Even Jake looked impressed, running his hand along the sleek silver hood with something like reverence. Okay, that's enough gawking, Adrian said finally. Say thank you and let's go. A chorus of thank yous, and then Emma surprised him by hugging Selena quickly before running to catch up with her siblings. Selena stood there looking slightly stunned, one hand where Emma had wrapped her arms around her waist. Sorry about that, Adrian said. They're not used to meeting new people. Don't apologize, Selena said quietly. That was nice. They stood there in the parking lot, the sun finally setting, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. Adrian knew he should go, should round up his kids, get them home, stick to the routine that had kept them all afloat for 4 years. But Selena was looking at him with those dark, assessing eyes, and he realized she wasn't assessing anymore. She was asking. Thank you for dinner, she said. You paid. For the company, then. Adrian shoved his hands in his pockets. Where are you staying tonight? There's a motel about 20 miles back. I passed it on the way in. That place is a dump. You'll get bed bugs just looking at it. I've stayed in worse. Adrian doubted that, but he didn't argue. Drive careful, and seriously, get that car looked at. I will. She pulled out the business card he'd given her earlier, studying it again. Adrian Cole, Briar Glen Auto Repair. Open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6. That's me. She looked up. If I came back Wednesday, would you fix it properly? If you bring it Wednesday, I'll have the parts by then. Yeah. Then I'll see you Wednesday. She got into the Maserati and Adrian watched her drive away, tail lights disappearing into the gathering dark. When he turned around, all 3 of his kids were standing there, matching expressions of curiosity on their faces. Don't even start, he said. She likes you, Emma said matter-of-factly. She does not. She's just being polite. She hugged her, Sophie pointed out. You hugged her. That was your idea. She didn't stop me. Adrian herded them toward his truck. Doesn't matter. She's not from here. She's just passing through. She said she'd come back Wednesday, Jake said quietly. Adrian opened the truck door. Yeah, well, people say a lot of things. Wednesday arrived with the kind of heat that made the air shimmer. Adrian had convinced himself she wouldn't show. Rich people didn't come back to places like Briar Glen. They got their cars fixed in the city, paid someone else to deal with the inconvenience, moved on with their lives. So when the silver Maserati pulled up at 9:15, he was genuinely surprised. Selena stepped out wearing jeans this time. Actual jeans? though they probably cost more than his monthly utilities, and a simple white t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she looked almost normal. Almost. "Morning," she said. "Morning. You made it." "I said I would." Adrian gestured to the garage. "Pull her in. I've got the parts already." She did, and Adrian got to work. This time, there was no awkward silence. Selena had brought coffee, good coffee, from somewhere that wasn't the gas station, and she settled onto an overturned crate like she'd done it 100 times before. "Tell me about them," she said after a while. Adrian didn't look up from the alternator. "About who?" "Your kids. Emma's the scientist, Sophie's the fearless one, and Jake is... What, the thinker?" Despite himself, Adrian smiled. "Jake's the worrier. Takes everything seriously, feels everything too much. Emma's the brain, yeah. Wants to be a doctor or an astronaut, changes her mind every week. And Sophie's..." He paused, wrench in hand. "Sophie's the one who reminds me why I keep going." "That's a lot of pressure for a 6-year-old. "I don't mean it like that. I just mean she's joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. When everything else feels heavy, she's light." Selena was quiet for a moment. "They're lucky to have you," Adrian snorted. "Tell that to Emma when I can't help with her math homework, or Jake when I miss his baseball games because I'm stuck here, or Sophie when what?" He set down the wrench. "When she asks about her mom, and I don't know what to say." The confession hung in the air between them. Adrian hadn't meant to say it, hadn't meant to open that door, but somehow it had swung wide anyway. "How did she die?" Selena asked quietly. "If you don't mind me asking." "Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. She was on her way home from book club." Adrian picked up the wrench again, needing something to do with his hands. "It was quick. That's what everyone says, like it's supposed to help. At least she didn't suffer. As if that makes it better." "Does it?" "No." Selena shifted on the crate. "I'm not going to tell you I understand. I've never lost anyone like that. But I know what it's like to have your life mapped out one way and then wake up and realize the map is useless." Adrian glanced at her. "What happened to your map?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "I spent my entire life doing what I was supposed to do. The right schools, the right degree, the right career. I took over my father's company when I was 25 because that was the plan. I dated the men he approved of, attended the events that mattered, said the things that made me look good. And one day I woke up and realized I had everything I was supposed to want and absolutely nothing I actually needed." "What do you need?" "I don't know. That's the problem." Adrian tightened the last bolt and straightened, wiping his hands. "Well, your car should make it back to wherever you came from now. That's a start." Selena stood, brushing dust off her jeans. "Chicago. That's where I'm from." "Long way from here." "Yeah." She looked around the shop, at the cluttered workbench, the faded posters, the oil stains that would never come out. "It is." Adrian walked her to the car, calculating the bill in his head. Parts, labor, the rush order fee he should probably charge but knew he wouldn't. 400 even, he said. Selena handed him her card without hesitation. As he ran it through the ancient credit card machine that took 3 tries to connect, she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Would you have dinner with me again? Just us this time." Adrian looked up from the receipt printer. "Why?" "Because talking to you is the first honest conversation I've had in months. Because your kids are wonderful and terrifying and so full of life it makes me ache. Because when I drove away Sunday night, I spent the entire drive back to Chicago thinking about this place and wondering what it would be like to stay." She met his eyes. "Because I'd like to know you better. If you're interested." Adrian should have said no, should have handed her the receipt, sent her on her way, gone back to his safe, structured life where feelings were manageable and risk was minimized. But he thought about the way she'd listened to Emma, laughed with Sophie, sat in his shop like she belonged there. Thought about how easy it had been to talk to her, to say things he hadn't said to anyone in 4 years. "Saturday," he heard himself say. 7 o'clock. But not here. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Selena smiled. That real smile again, the one that transformed her whole face. Saturday, 7 o'clock. She drove away and Adrian stood in the garage bay watching until the Maserati disappeared. When he turned around, His shop felt emptier than it had in a long time. Saturday night, Adrian stood in front of his bathroom mirror and tried to remember the last time he'd been on an actual date. 4 years. Maybe 5. He settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that wasn't too wrinkled, ran a hand through his hair that was starting to gray at the temples, and tried to ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach that felt like something a teenager would experience, not a 32-year-old widower with 3 kids. Mrs. Henderson from next door had agreed to watch Emma, Jake, and Sophie, though agreed might be generous. She'd practically shoved him out the door when he'd asked, muttering something about how it was about time he rejoined the living. He picked Selena up at the bed and breakfast on Route 9. The nice one, not the motel he'd warned her about. She was waiting on the porch, wearing a dark blue dress that was simple but elegant, her hair down around her shoulders. "You look beautiful," Adrian said, and meant it. "You don't look so bad yourself." The restaurant was in the next town over, a place called the Riverside that actually lived up to its name. Tables overlooking a lazy river, string lights hanging between the trees, live music drifting from a small stage in the corner. They got a table outside, and for the first few minutes just looked at the menu and pretended they weren't both nervous. "I haven't done this in a while," Selena admitted. "Done what? Eaten dinner?" "Been on a date that I actually wanted to be on." Adrian set down his menu. "What does that mean?" She sighed, tracing the rim of her water glass with one finger. "Most of my relationships have been strategic. Men my father approved of, men who fit the image, men who wanted access to my company or my money or my name." She looked up. "No one who just wanted me." "That sounds lonely." "It is." She paused. "What about you? Have you dated since?" "No, not really. A few setups that went nowhere. Mostly I've been focused on the kids." "That sounds lonely too." Adrian smiled slightly. "Yeah, it is." The waiter came, took their orders, disappeared. The sun was setting over the river, painting everything in shades of purple and gold. "Tell me something true," Selena said suddenly. "What?" "Something true. Something you don't tell people." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "I'm terrified every single day that I'm screwing up my kids, that I'm not enough, that they need their mom, and all I can give them is a father who works too much and burns dinner and can't do Emma's hair the way she likes it. I'm terrified that one day they'll look at me and realize I've been faking it this whole time." Selena was quiet, her dark eyes reflecting the string lights overhead. "Something true," she said finally. "I'm 30 years old. I'm worth $3 billion. I've been on the cover of Forbes twice. And I've never been in love. Not real love. I don't even know what it feels like." Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. He didn't plan it, didn't think about it, just did it. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. Their food came, and they ate, and talked about everything and nothing. Selena told him about growing up in her father's shadow, about board meetings and hostile takeovers and the suffocating weight of expectations. Adrian told her about the early days after his wife died, about learning to braid hair from YouTube videos and burning so many dinners they'd lived on cereal for a month. "Why mechanics?" Selena asked. "Why that specifically?" "I like fixing things, figuring out what's broken and making it work again. There's something satisfying about that, taking something that's completely dead and bringing it back to life." He smiled. "Plus, I'm not smart enough for anything else." "That's not true. You sound pretty sure about that." "I am. You're raising 3 kids alone, running a business, keeping everything together. That takes intelligence. Just a different kind than what gets you into Harvard." "Did you go to Harvard?" "Yale, actually. Business school at Stanford. Because that was the plan." "Do you ever wish you'd done something different?" Selena considered this, swirling her wine. "Every day. But it's hard to walk away from something you've built, even if you built it for the wrong reasons. So don't walk away. Change it. That's easier said than done. Most things worth doing are." After dinner, they walked along the river path, the music from the restaurant fading behind them. The air was cooler now, carrying the smell of water and wildflowers. "I like it here," Selena said. "It's quiet." "Too quiet for you, probably. Someone used to Chicago." "Maybe that's why I like it." They stopped at a bench overlooking the water. sat down, not quite touching, the space between them charged with something Adrian hadn't felt in so long, he'd almost forgotten what to call it. My father would hate this, Selena said quietly. Hate what? This. You. The idea that I'm in some small town with a mechanic instead of networking with investors or closing deals or doing something productive. Am I not productive? She smiled. You know what I mean. Yeah, I do. And I'm guessing your father's opinion matters. It's complicated. He built the company from nothing. Everything I have, everything I am, it comes from him. Walking away or disappointing him feels like betrayal. Adrian was quiet for a moment. My wife used to say something. She said that living your life for someone else's approval is just a slower way of dying. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. Selena looked at him, and in the moonlight, she looked younger somehow, vulnerable. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Be someone other than what everyone expects. Adrian took her hand again, felt her fingers tighten around his. Then don't be someone other. Just be yourself. The real version. The one who laughs at my daughter's bad jokes and drinks coffee in a garage and says what she actually thinks instead of what sounds good. And what if that's not enough? For who? For anyone. For you. Adrian turned to face her fully. Selena, I'm a widowed mechanic with 3 kids and a business that barely stays afloat. I live in a town where nothing happens. I drive a truck that's held together with duct tape and prayer, and the last time I took a vacation was never. You're a billionaire from Chicago who runs a tech company. On paper, this makes no sense. But I like you. The real you. The one who showed up in my shop looking lost. The one who had dinner with my kids and didn't run screaming. The one sitting here right now, scared and honest and more real than anyone I've met in years. He touched her face gently. That's enough. That's more than enough. She kissed him. Or maybe he kissed her. Either way it happened, soft and tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. And for a moment, everything else fell away. The restaurant, the river, the complications and expectations and fear. Just them, on a bench in the moonlight, finding something neither of them had been looking for. When they finally pulled apart, Selena was crying. I'm sorry, she said, laughing through tears. This is stupid. It's not stupid. I don't cry. I haven't cried in years. Adrian wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Then you're overdue. They sat there for a long time, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her, the river moving past in the darkness. Neither of them said anything. Didn't need to. When Adrian finally drove her back to the bed and breakfast, Selena didn't get out of the truck right away. I have to go back to Chicago tomorrow, she said. I know. But I'll come back if you want that. Adrian took her hand one more time. Yeah, I want that. She kissed him again, quick and sweet, then disappeared into the bed and breakfast. Adrian sat in his truck, watching the lights go on in her window, feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff and wasn't sure if he was falling or flying. When he got home, all 3 kids were supposed to be asleep. Instead, they were waiting in the living room, trying and failing to look casual. How was your date? Emma asked innocently. Fine. Just fine? Sophie pressed. It was good. Now go to bed. Are you going to see her again? Jake asked. Adrian looked at his son, 10 years old and already too serious, already carrying too much. Yeah, buddy, I think I am. Emma grinned. Sophie cheered. Even Jake smiled a little. Now bed, all of you. I'm serious. They scattered, a chorus of good nights echoing down the hall. Adrian stood in his living room, still wearing the button-down shirt, still feeling the ghost of Selena's kiss on his lips. For the first time in 4 years, the house didn't feel quite so empty. For the first time in 4 years, neither did he. The first week without Selena felt longer than the 4 years Adrian had spent alone. She called every night. Not long conversations. She was busy. He had kids to put to bed. Life didn't stop just because they'd found something unexpected by a river in the dark. But she called. 10 minutes before the kids' bedtime, her voice crackling through his cheap phone like a lifeline he hadn't known he needed. How was your day? She'd ask, and Adrian would tell her about Mrs. Patterson's Buick finally dying for good, About Sophie's impromptu performance of a song she'd made up about sandwiches, about Jake getting a B+ on his history test and acting like it was a failure. Then he'd ask about hers, and Selena would talk about board meetings and conference calls and investor pitches in a voice that sounded tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. "You okay?" he asked on Thursday night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling. A pause. Then, "I told my father about you today." Adrian sat up. "You what?" He asked why I'd been distracted, so I told him. "And?" "And he thinks I've lost my mind." Her laugh was sharp, humorless. Actually, his exact words were that I was jeopardizing everything he'd built by slumming with some small-town nobody. The words hit harder than Adrian wanted to admit. He'd known this would come eventually, the reality check, the reminder that their worlds didn't fit, but hearing it laid out so bluntly still stung. "Maybe he's right," Adrian said quietly. "Don't." "Selena, don't you dare agree with him." Her voice turned fierce. "You're not nobody, and I'm not jeopardizing anything except his control over my life. This isn't going to be easy." "I know. Your father's not going to let this go." "I know that too." She was quiet for a moment. "Are you having second thoughts?" Adrian thought about the way she'd cried on that bench, the way she'd kissed him like she was drowning and he was air, the way his kids had smiled when he'd come home that night. "No," he said, "but I want you to be sure, really sure, because once my kids get attached, once I get more attached, walking away is going to hurt, for all of us. I'm not walking away." "You say that now?" "Adrian." She cut him off, her voice steady. "I've spent 30 years doing what other people expected, following the path that was laid out for me, being the daughter, the CEO, the face on the magazine cover that made everyone else comfortable. And I'm done. I don't know what this is or where it's going, but for the first time in my life, I'm choosing something because I want it, not because it makes sense or looks good or fits the plan. So no, I'm not walking away." Adrian lay back down, phone pressed to his ear, something tight in his chest loosening just slightly. "Okay?" he said. "Okay?" "Yeah, okay." He could hear her breathing on the other end, could almost see her sitting in whatever expensive apartment she lived in, probably in silk pajamas that cost more than his mortgage. "I'm coming back this weekend," she said. "You don't have to." "I want to, if that's—" "Is that okay?" Adrian smiled in the darkness. "Yeah, that's okay." When Friday afternoon rolled around, Adrian found himself cleaning the house like his life depended on it. He wasn't even sure why. Selena had already seen his shop, had dinner with his kids at a pizza place with duct-taped boots, but something about her coming to his actual home felt different, more real, more permanent. "Dad, why are you vacuuming?" Emma asked, watching him from the doorway with barely concealed amusement. "Because this place is a disaster." "It's always a disaster. You never vacuum." "Well, I'm vacuuming now." "Because Selena's coming." It wasn't a question. Adrian shut off the vacuum. "Go do your homework." "Already done. Unlike you, I don't procrastinate." "When did you get so smart?" Emma grinned. "I've always been smart. You just weren't paying attention." She disappeared down the hall, and Adrian went back to cleaning, trying to ignore the nervous energy that had been building all week. He was acting like a teenager, and he knew it, but he couldn't seem to stop. Selena arrived at 6, driving a different car this time, something practical and nondescript, that probably cost just as much as the Maserati, but didn't scream wealth quite so loudly. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back, makeup minimal. She looked nervous. "Hi," she said when he opened the door. "Hi yourself." They stood there for a second, awkward, until Sophie came barreling around the corner and launched herself at Selena with zero warning. "You came back!" Selena caught her, stumbling slightly, then laughed. "I said I would. Dad made us clean our rooms. He never makes us clean our rooms." "Sophie," Adrian warned. But Selena was smiling, really smiling, and she let Sophie drag her inside to see the supposedly clean room. Adrian followed, watching his daughter chatter nonstop, while Selena listened with what looked like genuine interest. Emma appeared next, more reserved but clearly happy, showing Selena her science project. Then Jake, quiet but present, offering a small smile when Selena asked about his book. Dinner was chaotic. Spaghetti that Adrian only slightly burned, garlic bread from a bag, salad that Sophie refused to eat. But Selena fit into the chaos like she'd been doing this for years, passing plates and refilling drinks, and laughing when Sophie got sauce on her nose. After the kids went to bed, a process that took 3 times longer than usual because they kept finding excuses to come back downstairs, Adrian and Selena finally sat on the back porch with cheap beer and the sound of crickets filling the silence. "Your kids are wonderful," Selena said. "They're exhausting." That too. She took a sip of beer, made a face. "This is terrible. It's all I've got." I wasn't complaining. She leaned back against the porch railing, just observing. Adrian studied her in the dim light from the kitchen window. "What did your father say, really?" Selena sighed. "He said I was being irrational, that I was having some kind of crisis and needed to refocus on what matters. He's already got meetings scheduled with potential, he called them suitable partners, men from the right families, the right companies." "You going to those meetings?" "No." "He's not going to let this go." "I know." Adrian set down his beer. "Selena, I need you to understand something. I can't compete with your world. I can't give you fancy dinners or private jets or whatever it is you're used to. This," he gestured to the house, the porch, the backyard that needed mowing. "This is what I've got. 3 kids, a mortgage, a business that barely breaks even most months. If you're looking for excitement or glamour or an escape from your life, I'm not that guy." Selena stood, crossed the porch, and took his hands in hers. "I don't want glamour. I've had glamour. I'm drowning in glamour. What I want is this. Real conversations. Your daughter asking me 100 questions about why the sky is blue. Your son actually smiling when I remembered the name of his book. You looking at me like I'm a person instead of a brand or an asset or a trophy. You sure about that? Because real gets boring. Real is fighting about whose turn it is to do dishes. Real is sick kids at 3 in the morning and broken water heaters and worrying about money. And what you have is perfect. Hell no, but it's mine. It's real, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not asking you to." She moved closer. "I'm asking you to let me be part of it." Adrian kissed her then, tasting beer and something sweeter underneath. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "My kids are going to get attached," he said quietly. "Good. I'm going to get attached. I'm counting on it. And when your father shows up, because he will, what then?" Selena pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Then I deal with him. This is my life, Adrian, not his, and I'm choosing you." The words should have been reassuring, and they were, mostly, but Adrian had lived long enough to know that choosing something and keeping it were 2 very different things. The next morning, Selena was still there. Adrian woke up to find her in the kitchen making pancakes, or trying to, based on the smoke alarm that had gone off twice already. Sophie was standing on a chair, helping, which mostly meant throwing chocolate chips everywhere. Emma was setting the table with elaborate precision. Jake was reading at the counter, occasionally glancing up to watch Selena with cautious curiosity. It looked like a family. It felt like a dream Adrian was terrified of waking up from. "Dad, Selena doesn't know how to flip pancakes," Sophie announced. "I can see that." Selena turned, spatula in hand, flour somehow in her hair. "In my defense, I've never actually made pancakes before." "Never?" "We had a chef growing up, and now I mostly eat at restaurants or get takeout." Adrian moved to the stove, gently took the spatula. "Here, you've got to wait until the bubbles form, then flip quick." He demonstrated, and Selena watched like he was performing surgery. When he handed back the spatula, their fingers brushed, and something electric passed between them. "Try it," he said. She did, flipping the pancake with exaggerated concentration. It landed perfectly, and Sophie cheered like Selena had just won an Olympic medal. "I did it!" "You did," Adrian said, smiling. They ate breakfast as a family. That word kept echoing in Adrian's head, dangerous and tempting. Afterward, Selena helped Sophie build an elaborate fort in the living room, while Adrian and Jake threw a football in the backyard. "Do you like her?" Adrian asked, tossing the ball. Jake caught it, threw it back. "She's okay. Just okay. She makes you smile more." Adrian caught the ball, held it. "Does that bother you?" "No." Jake kicked at the grass. Mom used to make you smile like that. The words hung in the air between them. Adrian set down the football, walked over, and put his hand on Jake's shoulder. Yeah, she did. And I miss that. I miss her. But she's gone, buddy, and I think— He paused, choosing his words carefully. I think she'd want us to be happy, to find new people to care about. You really like Selena? Yeah, I really do. Jake looked toward the house where they could hear Sophie's laughter echoing. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. Jake picked up the football. But if she hurts you, I'm going to be really mad. Adrian pulled his son into a hug, this kid who was trying so hard to be grown up, to protect everyone. Deal. That afternoon, while the kids were occupied with a movie, Adrian and Selena took a walk through town. Briar Glen on a Saturday was quiet. A few people at the hardware store, some kids at the park, Mrs. Henderson watering her garden and waving like she knew exactly what was happening and approved. People are staring, Selena said. Small town, new person, especially new person with the widower. Yeah, they're going to stare. Does that bother you? Adrian shrugged. Used to. After Sarah died, everyone stared. Poor Adrian, poor kids, all those pitying looks, the casseroles that kept showing up. After a while, you stopped noticing. They walked past the library, the post office, the diner where Adrian sometimes took the kids for milkshakes when he couldn't face cooking. Tell me about her, Selena said quietly. Your wife. Adrian had been waiting for this. Most people tiptoed around it, afraid to mention Sarah like saying her name would shatter him, but Selena just asked, direct and honest. She was good, he said finally. Not perfect. She had a temper, and she was terrible with money, and she couldn't cook to save her life. But she was good. She made everything feel lighter somehow, like nothing was as serious as it seemed. Do you still love her? Yeah, I always will. He stopped walking, turned to face Selena. But she's gone, and I'm still here, and I'm tired of living like I'm waiting for permission to move on. Selena touched his face. I'm not trying to replace her. I know, and that's why this works. They walked back to the house holding hands, and Adrian tried not to think about how temporary this felt, how fragile. Good things didn't last. He'd learned that the hard way. But for now, she was here. For now, it was enough. Sunday morning came too fast. Selena had to leave. Had a Monday morning meeting she couldn't miss. She packed her small bag while the kids watched from the doorway, various levels of sadness on their faces. You'll come back? Sophie asked, voice small. I will. I promise. When? Selena looked at Adrian. Next weekend? You don't have to. I want to. She zipped her bag. Unless you don't want me to. That's not what I said. She smiled. Then next weekend. The kids hugged her goodbye. Even Jake, who usually avoided physical affection like a disease. Then Adrian walked her to her car, the morning air cool and carrying the smell of rain. Thank you, Selena said, for this, for letting me be part of it. Thank you for the terrible pancakes. She laughed, kissed him. I'll get better. I'm counting on it. He watched her drive away, the practical car disappearing down the street, and felt the emptiness settle back in. But it was different this time, less heavy, more like waiting than grieving. Inside, Emma was already at the table doing homework. Jake had retreated to his room. Sophie was building something elaborate with blocks. Is she your girlfriend now? Sophie asked without looking up. Adrian sat down next to her. I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. She's nice. Yeah, she is. Emma glanced up from her math worksheet. Her dad doesn't like you, does he? What makes you say that? I heard you talking last night, on the porch. Adrian sighed. Emma, I wasn't spying. The window was open, and you weren't exactly quiet. No, her dad doesn't like me much. Why not? Because I'm not what he wanted for her. I'm not rich or important or from the right family. Sophie stopped building. That's dumb. Yeah, it kind of is. Are you going to stop seeing her? Emma asked, and there was something too old in her voice, too worried. Do you want me to? Emma was quiet for a long moment, then, no. I like her. She's different from other adults. She actually listens. She does. But you're scared. Adrian looked at his daughter, 8 years old and reading him like a book. Yeah, I'm scared. Of what? Of her leaving, of you guys getting hurt, of this being temporary. Sophie climbed into his lap. Everything's temporary, Dad. That's what you told me when I was sad about my goldfish dying. That's different. How? Adrian wrapped his arms around his youngest daughter. I don't know. It just is. The following week crawled by. Selena called every night, but the conversations got shorter, more strained. She was busy, some crisis at the company, hostile investors, her father breathing down her neck. Adrian could hear the exhaustion in her voice, the way she deflected when he asked if she was okay. On Wednesday, she didn't call at all. Adrian told himself it was fine, she was busy, it didn't mean anything. But he lay awake staring at his phone anyway, anxiety curling in his stomach. Thursday morning, a black Mercedes pulled up to his shop. Adrian was under a Honda Civic when he heard the car door close, expensive shoes clicking on concrete. He rolled out from under the car and found himself looking at a man in his 60s wearing a suit that probably cost more than Adrian made in a month. The resemblance to Selena was unmistakable. Adrian Cole? The man's voice was cold, controlled. That's me. Richard Vale, Selena's father. Adrian stood, wiping his hands on a rag. What can I do for you, Mr. Vale? You can stay away from my daughter. The words were delivered calmly, matter-of-factly, like an order Richard expected to be followed without question. Adrian crossed his arms. Does Selena know you're here? What my daughter knows is irrelevant. This is between us, men to men. Pretty sure it's between me and Selena. You know, the two people actually in the relationship. Richard's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. You think you're in a relationship? She's bored, Mr. Cole, rebelling against the life I built for her. You're a distraction, a phase. And when she comes to her senses, which she will, you and your children will be collateral damage. The mention of his kids made Adrian's jaw tighten. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. Selena has responsibilities, a company to run, a legacy to uphold. She can't do that playing house with a mechanic in a town nobody's heard of. Maybe she doesn't want to uphold your legacy. What she wants is irrelevant to what she needs. I built an empire for her, sacrificed everything so she could have opportunities I never had, and I won't let her throw it away for... He gestured dismissively at Adrian, the shop, everything. This. Adrian stepped closer. You know what I think? I think you're terrified, because for the first time in her life, Selena is making her own choices. And you can't control that. Control? Richard laughed, sharp and humorless. I'm protecting her from making a mistake that will destroy everything she's worked for. You have nothing to offer her. No wealth, no status, no future. Just 3 children who aren't even hers and a business that's 1 bad month away from bankruptcy. You looked into me. Of course I did. Did you think I wouldn't? I know everything about you, Mr. Cole. Your financial situation, your late wife's medical debts that you're still paying off, the fact that you're underwater on this property and behind on your truck payments. You're drowning, and you want to drag my daughter down with you. The words hit like punches, each one landing because they were true. Adrian was barely keeping his head above water most days. He did have debt. The shop was struggling, but hearing it laid out so clinically, so dismissively, made something hot and defensive rise in his chest. I never asked Selena for anything. You didn't have to. Your situation speaks for itself, and sooner or later she'll realize what you're really after. Which is? Money, security, a way out of this pathetic existence. Richard moved closer, voice dropping. I've dealt with men like you before. Men who see opportunity in my daughter and mistake it for love. I know exactly what you are. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. Richard pulled out his wallet, extracted a check, held it out. $250,000. Take it and walk away. Tell Selena it's over, that you realized it was a mistake, whatever you want. But end it now before she gets in any deeper. Adrian stared at the check, at the zeros that could solve so many of his problems. Pay off Sarah's medical bills, fix the shop, set up college funds for his kids. Then he looked at Richard Vale's cold, calculating eyes and felt nothing but anger. Keep your money, Adrian said. Don't be stupid. This is more than you'll make in 5 years. I said keep it. Adrian turned his back, walked to his workbench. And get out of my shop. You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make. He heard Richard's shoes click back toward the Mercedes, heard the engine start. Before driving away, Richard rolled down the window. When this falls apart, and it will, don't say I didn't warn you. Then he was gone, and Adrian was left standing in his shop, hands shaking with adrenaline and rage and fear. That night, he told Selena everything. He what? Her voice came through the phone, sharp and furious. Came to my shop. Offered me money to walk away. That son of a... She cut herself off. I'm so sorry. I'll talk to him. Selena, stop. I don't need you to fix this. He had no right. No, he didn't. But he's your father, and he's not going to stop. You need to understand that. This is what our life is going to look like if we keep doing this. Silence on the other end. Are you having second thoughts? Selena asked quietly. Adrian thought about the check, about Richard's words, about how easy it would be to take the money, walk away, protect his kids from whatever storm was coming. But he also thought about Selena making terrible pancakes, about the way she listened to Emma, about the feel of her hand in his. No, he said, but I need to know you're all in, because your father was right about one thing. I can't give you what you're used to, and if that's going to be a problem, stop! Her voice was fierce. Just stop. I don't want what I'm used to. I want something real. I want you. And I don't care what my father thinks or what he threatens or how much money he throws around. I'm not walking away. Okay? Okay? Yeah, okay. He could hear her breathing, could picture her pacing in whatever expensive apartment she lived in, working through the anger. I'm coming this weekend, she said, like we planned, and I'm going to deal with my father, but Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for not taking the money, for believing this is real. After they hung up, Adrian sat in the darkness of his living room and hoped like hell they weren't both making a terrible mistake. Friday came with rain that didn't quit. Adrian watched the water streak down the shop windows, turning everything outside into a gray blur. He'd been distracted all day, botching a simple brake job twice before getting it right, snapping at a customer who didn't deserve it, checking his phone every 5 minutes like a teenager waiting for a text. Selena hadn't called last night, hadn't texted this morning, and the silence was eating him alive. By 3 o'clock, he'd convinced himself she wasn't coming, that Richard had gotten to her somehow, that she'd realized Adrian wasn't worth the fight, that this whole thing had been a fantasy they'd both gotten caught up in but couldn't sustain. Then at 3:15, the Maserati pulled up outside. She'd driven the expensive car this time, and Adrian wasn't sure what that meant. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. He wiped his hands and walked out into the rain, getting soaked in the 10 seconds it took to reach her window. Selena rolled it down. Her eyes were red. You've been crying, Adrian said. Get in. I'm covered in grease. I don't care. Get in. He walked around, slid into the passenger seat, and suddenly they were in the small enclosed space together, rain hammering on the roof, the smell of expensive leather and her perfume surrounding him. What happened? He asked. Selena stared straight ahead through the windshield. I quit. Adrian's stomach dropped. You what? I quit, resigned, effective immediately. I'm out. The company? Your father's company? My company. Legally mine, but yes. She finally looked at him, and her expression was raw in a way he'd never seen. He went to the board, told them I was having a breakdown, that I was making irrational decisions, that I needed to be removed for the good of the company. He had votes lined up. People I thought were loyal to me, people I'd worked with for years. They were ready to push me out. Jesus, Selena. So I quit first, told them they could have it, all of it. The company, the drama, the backstabbing. I'm done. Adrian tried to process this. You just walked away from billions of dollars? I walked away from a cage. She turned to face him fully. Do you know what my father said when I told him I was resigning? He said good, that I'd proven I wasn't strong enough to lead anyway, that he'd known all along I'd fail without him pulling the strings. Her voice cracked on the last word, and Adrian reached for her hand. That's not true. Isn't it? I built that company exactly the way he taught me, made every decision he would have made. I didn't build anything. I just followed orders and called it leadership. So what now? Selena laughed, but there was no humor in it. I have no idea. For the first time in my life, I have absolutely no idea what comes next. No plan, no path, no expectations to meet. That's terrifying. Yeah. She squeezed his hand. It really is. They sat there in the car, rain pounding overhead, while Adrian tried to figure out what to say. This wasn't what he'd wanted. He'd never asked her to give up everything, never wanted to be the reason her whole life imploded. I didn't do this for you, Selena said quietly, reading his mind. I did it for me. I would have broken eventually anyway. You just gave me a reason to do it now instead of 10 years from now when I'd completely lost myself. Your father's going to blame me anyway. Probably, but I don't care what he blames you for. Selena, she kissed him, desperate and fierce, tasting like salt and rain, and something that might have been fear or might have been freedom. When she pulled back, her hands were shaking. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I've never not had a plan before, never not known exactly what I was supposed to do next. Welcome to how the rest of us live. She laughed again, and this time it was a little more real. Is this what you wanted? Total chaos? Not exactly what I had in mind, but we'll figure it out. How can you be so sure? Adrian touched her face, wiping away a tear with his thumb. Because I've already lost everything once, and I survived. You will too. They drove to his house in silence, Selena following in the Maserati that looked absurd parked in front of his small house. The kids were already home. Mrs. Henderson had picked them up, and they came running when they heard the cars. Sophie hit the door first. You're here. Dad said you might not come because of work. I came, Selena said, and her voice was steadier now. I'll always come. Emma appeared behind Sophie, taking in Selena's red eyes and rumpled clothes with that too smart gaze. Are you okay? I will be. Jake hung back, watching, and Adrian caught his eye. His son gave a small nod. Permission or approval, Adrian wasn't sure which. Maybe both. That night, after dinner and homework and the usual chaos of bedtime, Adrian found Selena standing in the backyard in the dark. The rain had stopped, leaving everything dripping and fresh-smelling. Can't sleep? He asked, handing her a beer. She took it automatically. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and realize I made a huge mistake, that I threw away everything for nothing. You think this is nothing? No, but what if it's not enough? What if I get bored or restless or... Selena? He turned her to face him. Stop catastrophizing. You made a choice. Now you live with it. Figure out what comes next. But you don't get to stand here and preemptively decide it's going to fail. How are you so calm about this? I'm not calm. I'm terrified. You just quit $1 billion company to be with a guy who can barely pay his mortgage. That's insane. So we're both terrified. Yeah, we are. She leaned against him, and they stood there in the dark, two people who'd blown up their lives and had no idea what they were building in the wreckage. The next morning, reality set in hard. Adrian woke up to find Selena already awake, sitting at his kitchen table with her laptop, surrounded by papers and looking like she hadn't slept. What are you doing? He asked, starting coffee. Damage control. My resignation hit the news at 6 this morning. My phone's been ringing nonstop. You going to answer it? Eventually, but not yet. She rubbed her eyes. The board's already named my father interim CEO. He's probably thrilled. Any regrets? She looked up, and despite the exhaustion, her eyes were clear. No. You? About you being here? No. About you nuking your entire life? Kind of. I didn't nuke it. I redirected it. That's a very optimistic way of looking at it. I'm trying something new. She closed the laptop. What's on the agenda for today? Adrian poured 2 cups of coffee. Well, I've got to work on Mrs. Henderson's transmission. Jake has baseball practice at noon. Sophie wants to go to the park, and Emma needs help with her science project, so basically a normal Saturday. Can I come to baseball practice? The question caught him off guard. You want to sit in the bleachers and watch 10-year-olds throw a ball around? Yes. Why? Because I've never done it. Because it sounds normal. Because... She paused. Because I want to see what your life actually looks like. So that's what they did. Adrian worked in the shop while Selena sat on that same overturned crate from weeks ago, answering emails on her phone and fielding increasingly angry calls from board members and investors. She'd taken off the expensive clothes, borrowed an old t-shirt of Adrian's, pulled her hair back with a rubber band she'd found in a drawer. She looked wrong and right at the same time. Around 11, they loaded the kids into Adrian's truck. Sophie insisted Selena sit in the middle and drove to the baseball field. It was one of those perfect late summer days, hot but not brutal, the kind of weather that made everything feel possible. Jake's team was mediocre at best. They lost more games than they won, and Jake spent most of his time in the outfield looking bored. But when he came up to bat in the third inning and actually hit the ball, sending it sailing into right field, Selena jumped up and cheered so loud the other parents turned to stare. "Sorry," she said, sitting back down. "I got excited." "Don't apologize," Adrian said. "That's the most attention Jake's gotten all season." After the game, they lost 7-3. Jake jogged over, sweaty and happy in a way Adrian rarely saw. "Did you see my hit?" he asked Selena. "I did. That was amazing." "It wasn't that amazing. It was just a single." "I don't care. It was still great." Jake smiled, actually smiled, and Adrian felt something shift in his chest. This was working. Somehow, impossibly, this was working. They got ice cream after, a tradition Adrian had started years ago because win or lose, the kids needed something to look forward to. They sat outside the shop, melting cones dripping everywhere, while Sophie told an elaborate story about a princess who fought dragons with a sword made of ice cream. "That doesn't make sense," Emma pointed out. "Ice cream would melt." "It's magic ice cream. Magic doesn't make it not melt." "You're no fun." Selena laughed, and the sound was lighter than Adrian had heard in days. She fit here, in this moment, in this place, with his chaotic kids, and their melting ice cream, and their nonsense arguments. She fit. That night, after the kids were asleep, Adrian and Selena sat on the porch again. It was becoming their spot, the place where they could talk without filters, without the kids listening, without the world pressing in. "My father called," Selena said. Adrian tensed. "What did he say?" "That I'm welcome to come crawling back whenever I'm done playing house. That he'll consider taking me back if I apologize publicly and commit to his leadership plan. That this relationship," she gestured between them, "is beneath me and everyone knows it." "How'd that make you feel?" "Angry, hurt, but mostly just tired. I'm tired of fighting him, tired of proving myself, tired of being measured against impossible standards." "So don't fight him, just live your life." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Selena was quiet for a long moment. "Because part of me still wants his approval, still wants him to look at me and see something worth being proud of." "How pathetic is that?" "It's not pathetic. He's your father. He's a tyrant who built an empire by crushing anyone who got in his way, including me. Doesn't mean you stop wanting him to love you." She turned to look at him, eyes shining. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who's made enough mistakes to recognize them in other people." She kissed him then, soft and slow, and for a moment everything else fell away. But when she pulled back, the worry was still there in her eyes. "What if I can't do this?" she whispered. "What if I'm too broken or too damaged or too used to the life I had?" "Then we figure it out, together." "You keep saying that, like it's easy." "It's not easy, but it's simple. You stay. I stay. We figure out the rest as we go." "And your kids? What if this falls apart and they get hurt?" Adrian had thought about that a lot. Late at night, when Selena wasn't there, and the house was quiet and doubt crept in like smoke. His kids had already lost one mother. What happened when they lost another? "They'll survive," he said finally. "We all will, but I don't think it's going to fall apart." "How can you know?" "I can't, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway." Selena leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat there while the night sounds built around them, crickets and distant traffic and the wind in the trees. "I love you," she said quietly. The words hung in the air, huge and terrifying and perfect. Adrian turned, tilted her face up to his. "Say that again." "I love you. I know it's fast and probably crazy and definitely not something I should be saying after I just blew up my entire life, but I do. I love you." He kissed her, tasting salt and beer and something that might have been hope. I love you too, he said against her lips. Have for a while now, just didn't know how to say it. She pulled back, laughing and crying at the same time. We're a mess. Yeah, we really are. But you're my mess now. Same. They went inside, and that night Selena stayed. Not in the guest room, not on the couch, but with Adrian, in his bed, wrapped around each other like they were afraid to let go. In the morning, everything changed again. Adrian woke up to find his bedroom door open and all three kids standing there, staring. He said. Is Selena staying forever now? Sophie asked. Selena woke up, saw the kids, and pulled the blanket higher. Good morning. Are you Dad's girlfriend? Emma asked bluntly. Adrian sat up. Okay, everybody out, now. But out. We'll talk about this after breakfast. They scattered, giggling, and Adrian collapsed back onto the pillow. Well, Selena said, that's one way to make it official. I'm sorry, they know better than to just walk in. Adrian, it's fine. They're kids. They're curious. She turned to look at him. But we should probably talk to them. Actually talk to them about what this is. I know. Are you ready for that? Adrian thought about it. About what it meant to introduce Selena as his girlfriend, as someone permanent in their lives. About the questions that would come, the adjustments, the way it would change everything. Yeah, he said, I think I am. They had the conversation over pancakes. Selena made them again, and they were only slightly burned this time. Adrian explained that yes, Selena was his girlfriend. Yes, she was going to be around more. No, that didn't mean she was replacing their mom. No one could replace their mom. But it did mean their family was growing, changing, becoming something new. Sophie accepted this immediately. Emma had questions, lots of questions, about logistics and expectations, and whether this meant Selena was moving in. Jake was quiet, processing, until finally he asked the question Adrian had been dreading. Are you going to marry her? Adrian glanced at Selena, who looked just as caught off guard. I don't know, buddy. We haven't talked about that. But you might. Maybe. Someday. If things keep going well. Jake nodded slowly. Okay. I just wanted to know. After breakfast, Selena got a call that made her face go white. I have to go to Chicago, she said, hanging up. Right now. What happened? My father, he had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. Adrian felt his stomach drop. Is he stable but serious? I have to go. I'll come with you. No, stay with the kids. I'll be back as soon as I can. She threw things into her bag, moving fast, her hands shaking. Adrian caught her at the door. Hey, he said, it's going to be okay. You don't know that. No, but I'm saying it anyway. She kissed him hard, desperate. Then she was gone. The Maserati's engine roaring to life and disappearing down the street. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching her go, and felt the first real stab of fear. 3 days passed with almost no word. Selena texted that her father was stable but not improving, that the doctors were monitoring him, that she'd be back soon, but the texts were short, distracted, and she didn't call. Adrian tried not to panic, tried to keep things normal for the kids, maintain the routine, pretend everything was fine. But Sophie kept asking when Selena was coming back, and Emma kept watching him with worried eyes, and Jake had gone quiet again. On the 4th day, Selena finally called. How is he? Adrian asked. Better. They think he's going to make it. Her voice was flat, exhausted. That's good. Is it? Selena, he's using this, Adrian, milking it for sympathy, telling everyone that the stress I caused made him sick, that if he dies, it's my fault. That's manipulation. I know, but it's working. The board's rallying around him. The press is eating it up. Poor Richard Vale, struck down by his ungrateful daughter. You know that's not true. Do I? Maybe he's right. Maybe I did this. Stop. You didn't give him a heart attack. You made a choice about your own life. That's not the same thing. Silence on the other end. Then, he wants to see me in the hospital. He says we need to talk. Are you going to go? I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me never wants to see him again. Adrian leaned against the wall, trying to think of the right thing to say. What do you want? Not what you should do or what looks right. What do you actually want? Another long pause. I want to come home. The word home hit him square in the chest. Then come home, he said. But my father will either get better or he won't. Either way, you sitting there making yourself sick with guilt won't change anything. What if he dies and I wasn't there? Then you'll deal with it. But you staying there out of obligation when it's killing you, that's not love. That's just fear. He could hear her breathing, could picture her in some sterile hospital waiting room, torn between duty and desire. I'll be back tomorrow, she said finally. Yeah? Yeah, I just need to see him first, say what I need to say, and then I'm done. Okay. Adrian? Yeah? I love you. I need you to know that, whatever happens, I love you. I love you too. She hung up, and Adrian stood there holding his phone, hoping like hell she meant it. The next afternoon, Selena's car pulled up to the house. Adrian was in the garage, but he heard it, came out wiping his hands. She got out slowly, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 4 days. Hey, he said. Hey. They stood there for a moment, 10 feet of driveway between them, and Adrian could see she was holding something back. What did he say? He asked. Your father. Selena's laugh was bitter. He offered me a deal. Come back to the company, end things with you, issue a public statement about needing to refocus on my responsibilities. In exchange, he'll step down in 5 years and leave me in full control. Everything I worked for. Everything I thought I wanted. Adrian's chest tightened. And you said? I told him to keep his company, keep his legacy, keep his conditions and his control and his empire. She walked closer. I told him I'm building something else now. Something real. And if he can't accept that, then we have nothing left to say to each other. How'd he take it? About as well as you'd expect. Said, I'm choosing poverty over prosperity. Said, you're using me. Said, I'll regret this for the rest of my life. Adrian waited, barely breathing. But here's the thing, Selena continued, and now she was right in front of him, looking up with those dark eyes that had first assessed him in his shop months ago. I don't care. I don't care about the money or the company or proving him wrong. I just want this. You, your kids, this life where people make terrible pancakes and go to baseball games and sit on porches drinking cheap beer. That's all you want? That's everything I want. Adrian pulled her close, feeling her shake against him. Whether from relief or fear or exhaustion, he didn't know, didn't care. Welcome home, he said. And this time when she cried, it wasn't from sadness. The kids heard the car and came running. Sophie reached Selena first, wrapping herself around her legs like a barnacle. Emma was close behind, trying to act casual but failing. Even Jake appeared in the doorway, hands shoved in his pockets, relief visible on his face. You're back, Sophie said, muffled against Selena's jeans. I'm back. For good? Selena glanced at Adrian over Sophie's head. Yeah. For good. Emma crossed her arms. Your dad's okay though, right? We saw it on the news. They said he had a heart attack. He's going to be fine. Are you okay? Jake asked quietly. The question seemed to catch Selena off guard. She crouched down to Sophie's level, which put her closer to all of them, and Adrian watched something vulnerable cross her face. I'm getting there, she said. It's been a rough few days. Do you want to talk about it? Emma asked, in that too adult way she had. Maybe later. Right now, I just want to be here. Sophie grabbed her hand. Come see what I made you. It's in my room. And just like that, Selena was pulled into the house, into the chaos of his life, like she'd never left. Adrian followed, watching her navigate the minefield of scattered toys and homework papers and the general disaster that was his home. She belonged here. He could see it now, clear as day. Not despite the mess, but because of it. That night, after dinner and baths and the extended bedtime routine that somehow took twice as long when Selena was there because the kids kept finding excuses to talk to her, Adrian and Selena finally had a moment alone. They were doing dishes. She was washing, he was drying, a domestic scene so ordinary it felt almost surreal given everything that had happened. So, Adrian said, you really told him no. I really did. Any regrets? Selena's hand stilled in the soapy water. Ask me again in 6 months. Right now? No. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. Of what? Of screwing this up. Of being so used to corporate war that I don't know how to do normal. Of disappointing your kids. Of disappointing you. Adrian set down the dish towel. You know what scares me? What? That you'll wake up one day and realize you gave up everything for a guy who burns toast and can't afford to take you anywhere nicer than Angelo's. I like Angelo's. You say that now. She turned to face him, suds dripping from her hands. Adrian, I spent 30 years in five-star restaurants having conversations I didn't care about with people I didn't like. I'll take burned toast and Angelo's every single time. You really mean that? Yes, I really mean that. Why is that so hard for you to believe? Because I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize what you actually gave up. Selena dried her hands and moved closer. I gave up a company that was suffocating me, a father who only valued me when I was useful, a life where every relationship was transactional and every conversation was calculated. What exactly should I be mourning? Financial security, power, influence. I have money, Adrian, more than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, even if I tried. I don't need the company for security. I needed it because I didn't know what else to do with my life. And now, she gestured around the kitchen, I'm figuring it out. By doing dishes in Briar Glen. By being with people who actually give a damn about me. Yeah. Adrian wanted to believe her. Wanted to trust that this wasn't just a phase or a rebellion or some quarter-life crisis that would burn itself out. But he'd been burned before. Not by Sarah, their marriage had been solid until the drunk driver took her, but by life itself. By the universe's apparent fondness for taking good things and destroying them. What are you thinking? Selena asked. That I'm probably going to screw this up somehow. Well, that's a given. I'll probably screw it up too. We'll take turns. Despite himself, Adrian smiled. That's your plan? We just alternate screwing up? Do you have a better one? Not really. She kissed him, tasting like dish soap and coffee, and for a moment the fear quieted. Not gone. It never fully went away, but manageable. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that surprised both of them. Selena found an apartment in town. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom above the hardware store that had been vacant for months. The landlord nearly fainted when she paid 6 months up front in cash, but she insisted on it. Said she needed her own space, somewhere that was hers, and not just an extension of Adrian's life. Adrian pretended he wasn't hurt by that, but he was, just a little. It's not about you, she explained one night, sitting on the floor of her new place, surrounded by boxes she hadn't unpacked. It's about me needing to prove I can do this. Build a life that's mine, not my father's, not yours. Mine. I get it. Do you? Because you look like I just told you I'm moving to Australia. It's just across town. Exactly. I'm 10 minutes away. But I need this, Adrian. I need to know I can be my own person. He understood, intellectually. But emotionally, it felt like a step backward. Like she was hedging her bets, keeping one foot out the door. But he didn't say that. Just helped her unpack boxes and assemble furniture from a store she'd never heard of because she'd never had to furnish her own apartment before. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted, staring at the instruction manual for a bookshelf that had approximately 700 pieces. I've always had people to do this. Then it's time you learned. They spent 4 hours on that bookshelf. It ended up slightly crooked and missing one shelf because they couldn't find the right screws, but Selena looked at it like she'd built the Sistine Chapel. I made that, she said. Technically, we made it. I made it. She was grinning like a kid. I've never built anything with my own hands before. It's a bookshelf, not a cathedral. To me, it's both. Watching her celebrate something so small made Adrian's chest ache. How had she lived 30 years without ever experiencing this? Without the simple satisfaction of building something, fixing something, making something work. Life settled into a new pattern. Selena spent mornings figuring out what to do with her life. She'd started taking online courses in psychology and education, things that had nothing to do with business or tech. Afternoons, she'd show up at the shop, not to help but just to be there, reading or working on her laptop or occasionally handing Adrian tools he didn't ask for. Evenings were for the kids, homework at the kitchen table with Emma grilling Selena about everything from photosynthesis to why people fell in love. Baseball practice with Jake, Selena learning the rules and actually enjoying it. Sophie's elaborate imaginary games that required Selena to play a dragon, or a queen, or sometimes both simultaneously. And nights, after the kids were asleep, Adrian and Selena would alternate between his place and hers, learning each other in the quiet hours. The way she couldn't sleep without the TV on because silence made her anxious. The way he still reached for the other side of the bed sometimes, forgetting for a moment that Sarah was gone. The way they both carried ghosts but were trying, fumbling, to build something new anyway. It wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes, about stupid things mostly. Whether to let Sophie eat dessert before dinner one night, whether Jake should quit baseball if he wasn't enjoying it, whether Adrian was being too protective or Selena was pushing too hard for changes too fast. I'm not trying to replace their mother, Selena said after one particularly heated argument about Jake's bedtime routine. I never said you were. But you're treating me like I am, like I'm some interloper trying to change everything. You are changing everything. Is that bad? Adrian didn't know how to answer that. Change wasn't inherently bad, but it was terrifying. His life had been carefully calibrated for survival, and Selena was throwing variables into the equation he didn't know how to account for. I just need you to understand, he said finally, that these kids have already lost one parent. I won't let them lose another. You think I'd abandon them? I think you've never had to stick around when things got hard. You've always had an exit strategy. The words came out harsher than he'd intended, and he saw them land like punches. Selena's face went very still. That's not fair, isn't it? You quit your company rather than fight for it. You walked away from your father rather than work through it. What happens when this gets hard? When my kids are difficult or money's tight or I'm not enough? I left the company because it was poison. I left my father because he was destroying me. That's not running away, Adrian. That's survival. And what about this? What about us? What about us? When it gets hard, and it will, are you going to survive by leaving? Selena stood up, grabbed her coat. I need to go. See, you're doing it right now. She spun around and her eyes were blazing. No, I'm leaving before I say something I'll regret, because I'm angry and hurt and I need space to think. That's not abandonment, that's self-awareness. She left, and Adrian sat alone in his living room, wondering if he'd just destroyed the best thing to happen to him in 4 years. She came back the next morning. Adrian was making breakfast, badly, when he heard the knock. He opened the door to find Selena standing there with coffee from the good place 2 towns over and an expression that was equal parts determined and terrified. I'm not running, she said before he could speak. I'm here. I'm staying. But you need to stop waiting for me to leave. Because every time you do that, you're pushing me away while simultaneously accusing me of abandoning you, and that's not fair to either of us. Adrian took the coffee she offered. I'm sorry. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we can't build something real if you've already decided it's going to fail. I don't. Yes, you do. You're protecting yourself. I get it. But you're also sabotaging this before it has a chance to work. Adrian leaned against the door frame. After Sarah died, I promised myself I'd never let my kids go through that again. Never let them love someone who could disappear. I'm not going to disappear. You can't promise that. Nobody can. You're right, I can't. But I can promise that I'm not leaving because things get hard. I can promise that I chose this. Chose you, chose your kids, chose this life. With my eyes open. And I can promise that I'm done running from things that scare me. She held out her hand, and Adrian stared at it for a long moment before taking it. Okay, he said. Okay? Yeah, okay, I'll try to stop assuming you're leaving. And I'll try to be patient while you figure out how to trust this. They stood there in the doorway, holding hands like teenagers, while the coffee got cold, and somewhere inside the house, Sophie started singing about pancakes at the top of her lungs. October came with a cold snap that nobody expected. Adrian was in the shop when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Is this Adrian Cole? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Yeah, who's this? My name is Margaret Reeves. I'm calling from Vail Technologies. Adrian's stomach dropped. What do you want? Mr. Vail would like to speak with you. In person. I don't think that's a good idea. He's prepared to make it worth your while. and he's asked me to inform you that if you refuse, he'll be forced to pursue other avenues to protect his daughter's interests. Is that a threat? It's information, Mr. Cole. Will you meet with him or not? Adrian wanted to say no. Wanted to hang up and pretend this call had never happened. But the phrase other avenues stuck in his head, sharp and threatening. When? Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. The Riverside Hotel, Conference Room B. Fine, but I'm not promising anything. Mr. Vale doesn't need promises. He just needs your time. She hung up, and Adrian stood there holding his phone, dread pooling in his gut. He didn't tell Selena. Told himself it was because he didn't want to worry her, but really it was because he was afraid of what she'd say, that she'd insist on coming, that she'd make it bigger than it needed to be. The next day, he drove to the Riverside Hotel, feeling like he was heading to an execution. Richard Vale was waiting in the conference room, looking older than Adrian remembered. The heart attack had left its mark. Thinner, paler, but his eyes were still sharp as broken glass. Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. Adrian didn't sit down. Say what you need to say. Direct. I appreciate that. Richard gestured to the chair. Please, sit. I'm fine standing. Suit yourself. Richard opened a folder on the table. I've been following your relationship with my daughter, and I've come to realize something. What's that? That I underestimated you. Adrian waited. When we first met, I thought you were an opportunist, someone taking advantage of my daughter's temporary instability. But I've watched you. Watched how you handle her, how your children interact with her, and I've realized you actually care about her. Is that supposed to be a revelation? It changes my approach. Richard pushed the folder across the table. I'm prepared to offer you a significant sum, $2 million, to end this relationship. Not because you're using her, but because you're not. Adrian stared at the folder without touching it. I'm not following. My daughter gave up everything for you. Her company, her future, her legacy. And in exchange, she got what? A mechanic's life in a dying town? She deserves better than that, Mr. Cole. And deep down, you know it. She chose this life. She chose it because she's running from pressure and expectations. But eventually, reality will set in. She'll realize what she gave up. And when that happens, she'll resent you. Resent your children. Resent the life that trapped her. You don't know that. Don't I? I know my daughter. She's brilliant, ambitious, capable of extraordinary things. And right now she's playing house because it feels different from the life she had. But that novelty will wear off. And then what? Adrian finally sat down, not because Richard had won, but because his legs were shaking. What are you actually asking me to do? End it. Cleanly. Tell her you can't do this anymore, that it's not fair to your children, that you need someone more suited to your life. Take the money. Use it to secure your children's future. Let my daughter go back to the world where she belongs. And if I say no, Richard's expression hardened, then I'll make things very difficult for you. I have resources, Mr. Cole. I can investigate your business, find code violations, tie you up in legal battles you can't afford to fight. I can make your life hell in ways you can't imagine. So this isn't really a choice. Everything's a choice. I'm simply making the costs of each option very clear. Adrian looked at the folder, at the number that would solve every financial problem he had, that would pay off Sarah's medical debts, fix the shop, set up college funds for his kids. $2 million. For the price of his happiness. I need to think about it, he heard himself say. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires and I move to less pleasant alternatives. Adrian stood, left the folder on the table, and walked out. He made it to his truck before his hand started shaking so badly he couldn't get the key in the ignition. That night, he still didn't tell Selena. She came over for dinner, played with the kids, helped Sophie with a school project about families. Every time she laughed or smiled or fit seamlessly into his life, Adrian felt the weight of Richard's offer pressing down on him. $2 million. After the kids were asleep, Selena curled up next to him on the couch. You're quiet tonight. Just tired. Liar. What's wrong? Nothing. Just work stuff. She studied him, and Adrian knew she didn't believe him. But she didn't push, just laid her head on his shoulder and let it go. That night after she left, Adrian sat alone in the dark and did the math. $2 million invested conservatively would generate enough income to supplement the shop. His kids would never have to worry about college. He could finally stop living paycheck to paycheck. All he had to do was break Selena's heart and his own. He didn't sleep that night, just lay there staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What he'd say, how he'd say it, whether he could actually go through with it. By morning, he'd made his decision. He called Richard's assistant and asked for a meeting. Same place, same time. When Adrian walked into the conference room the next day, Richard was already there, looking triumphant. I assume you've made the smart choice. Adrian sat down, looked at the folder still sitting on the table. I need to know something first. What's that? Do you actually care about Selena, or is this just about control? Richard's expression flickered. I've given her everything. Opportunities most people only dream of. I built an empire specifically so she could inherit it. How is that not caring? You built a cage and called it a gift. There's a difference. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Adrian leaned forward. Selena spent 30 years living the life you wanted, following your plan, being the daughter you needed her to be. And it nearly destroyed her. The woman I met was empty, Richard. Hollow. Going through the motions of a life that meant nothing to her. She was successful. She was miserable. And you either didn't notice or didn't care. Richard stood up. I won't sit here and be lectured by someone who fixes cars for a living. Then I'll make this quick. Adrian pushed the folder back across the table. Keep your money. Keep your threats. Do whatever you think you need to do. But I'm not leaving Selena, and I'm not going to convince her to leave me. You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make. Adrian stood. And here's the thing you don't get. Selena doesn't need your approval anymore. She doesn't need your money or your company or your version of success. She just needs to be herself. And if you can't accept that, then you've already lost her. She'll come crawling back. When the novelty wears off and reality sets in, maybe, or maybe she'll build something better than anything you could have given her. Either way, that's her choice. Not yours. Not mine. Hers. Adrian walked out, and this time his hands weren't shaking. He drove straight to Selena's apartment and knocked until she answered, looking confused and still in pajamas even though it was almost noon. Adrian? What are you? He kissed her, hard and desperate, and when he pulled back her eyes were wide. Your father offered me $2 million to leave you. Selena went very still. What? Yesterday, had his assistant call, set up a meeting, said I had 48 hours to take the money and walk away. And you're just now telling me this? I needed to think about it. Her face went pale. You considered it. Of course I considered it. Do you have any idea what $2 million would mean for my kids? For their future? So what stopped you? Adrian took her hands. You did. This did. The idea of living without you was worse than living with debt. Selena pulled her hands away, pacing the small apartment. You should have told me immediately. You should have. I know, I'm sorry. But I needed to face this myself. Needed to know what I'd choose when it really mattered. And what did you choose? You. I chose you. She stopped pacing, turned to face him. My father's not going to stop. You know that, right? This was just the opening move. I know. He'll come after the shop, your business, maybe even try to prove you're an unfit father. Let him try. Adrian, you don't understand what he's capable of. Then help me understand. But do it while we're together, because I'm done making decisions about us separately. Selena crossed the room, wrapped her arms around him, and he felt her shaking. I'm so tired of fighting him. Then don't fight him. Just live your life. Be happy. That'll kill him more than any argument ever could. She laughed, wet and broken. You really think it's that simple? No, but I think it's worth trying. They stood there in her apartment, holding each other like they were the only solid things in a world that kept trying to tear them apart. I love you, Selena said, and I'm sorry my father is a nightmare. I love you too. And my in-laws being difficult is kind of a package deal with relationships. She pulled back, eyes red. In-laws? Adrian froze. I didn't mean that's not... I wasn't proposing or anything, but you thought about it. Maybe. Eventually, if we... He stopped, looking at her nervous, hopeful face. Yeah, I've thought about it. Me too. They stood there, not quite engaged, but not quite not, and somehow that felt exactly right. The attack came exactly 1 week later. Adrian was at the shop when the inspector showed up, a thin man with a clipboard and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. He spent 3 hours going through every inch of the property, writing notes, taking photos, finding violations Adrian didn't even know existed. "You've got 30 days to bring everything up to code," the inspector said, handing Adrian a citation list that was 6 pages long. "After that, we'll reassess. If you're not compliant, we'll have to shut you down pending further review." Adrian looked at the list. New electrical throughout the building, updated ventilation system, hazardous waste disposal upgrades, fire suppression equipment. The cost estimate at the bottom made his vision blur. $85,000. "This is insane," Adrian said. "I've been here for 8 years. Nobody's ever had a problem. Regulations change, Mr. Cole. And when we receive a formal complaint, we're required to investigate thoroughly." "Who filed the complaint?" The inspector's expression told Adrian everything he needed to know, even if the man couldn't legally say it. Richard Vale had made his next move. That night, Adrian sat at his kitchen table with the citation list and a calculator, running numbers that didn't work no matter how many times he tried. He could maybe scrape together $20,000 if he maxed out what credit he had left, and took a second mortgage on the house. But 85? Impossible. The shop was done. "Dad?" He looked up to find Jake standing in the doorway, backpack still on his shoulders from school. "Hey, buddy, how was your day?" "Fine." Jake came closer, looking at the papers. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just work stuff." "You're a terrible liar." Jake sat down across from him. "Is it about Selena?" "No." "Why would you think that?" "Because you've been weird since she showed up, happy but also scared, like you're waiting for something bad to happen." Adrian set down the calculator. "When did you get so smart?" "I pay attention." Jake picked up one of the citation papers. "What's this?" "The shop failed an inspection. I have to fix a bunch of stuff or they'll shut me down." "Can you fix it?" "Not without money I don't have." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Is this because of Selena's dad?" Adrian looked at his son, 10 years old and already understanding more than he should have to. "Yeah, probably. That's not fair." "No, it's not." "Are you going to fight it?" "I don't know how. I can't afford a lawyer, and even if I could, he's got resources I can't compete with." Jake stood up, came around the table, and put his hand on Adrian's shoulder. The gesture was so grown up, so achingly mature, that Adrian felt something crack in his chest. "Mom used to say that the only way to beat bullies is to not let them see you scared," Jake said. "Your mom was braver than me." "No, she wasn't. She was just better at pretending." Adrian pulled his son into a hug, this kid who'd lost his mother and was now watching his father struggle, and tried not to let Jake feel him shaking. When Selena came over later, Adrian told her everything. She went very still, very quiet, in that way she had when she was furiously angry but trying to control it. "He's trying to destroy you," she said. "He's trying to scare me off. There's a difference." "Is it working?" Adrian thought about the citation list, about the impossible numbers, about the very real possibility that he'd lose the shop. "I don't know, maybe." Selena stood up, pacing the small kitchen. "I can pay for it. The repairs. I have the money." "No." "Adrian." "I said no. I'm not taking your money to fight your father. That's exactly what he wants, to prove I'm using you." "Who cares what he wants to prove? This is about saving your business. It's about more than that. If I take your money now, I'm dependent on you. And the second we have problems, and we will have problems, it becomes ammunition. You paid for everything, you own me, you can leave whenever you want, and I'm screwed." "That's not how I see it." "That's how everyone else will see it, including me eventually." Selena stopped pacing, turned to face him. "So what? You just give up, let him win?" "I don't know, I'm still figuring it out." "Well, figure it out faster, because I'm not watching you lose everything without fighting back." "This isn't your fight, Selena." "Like hell it isn't. He's doing this because of me, because I chose you. That makes it absolutely my fight." They stared at each other across the kitchen, both furious and scared and completely at a loss for what to do next. "I'm sorry," Selena said finally. "I'm sorry that loving me comes with this much baggage." Adrian crossed to her, took her hands. "I'd rather have you and the baggage than nothing at all. but I need to handle this my way. Can you understand that? No, but I'll try. That night after Selena left, Adrian lay in bed and faced the reality he'd been avoiding. The shop was probably done. He could fight the citations, maybe get some of them reduced, but without serious capital, he couldn't bring the place up to modern code. It was a building from the 70s that had been grandfathered in under old regulations. Now that someone had forced a review, those protections were gone. He could sell. Use whatever equity he had to start over somewhere else. But the thought of giving Richard that victory made him physically sick. There had to be another way. The answer came from an unexpected source. 2 days later, Adrian was closing up the shop when a car pulled up he didn't recognize, a practical sedan, a few years old, well-maintained. A woman got out, late 50s, carrying herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of winning battles. Adrian Cole? That's me. Jennifer Strauss. I'm an attorney from Chicago. I'd like to talk to you about your situation. Adrian's guard went up immediately. If Richard Vale sent you, he didn't. Selena did. Jennifer held up her hands. And before you get angry, just listen. I'm not here to fight your battles for you or throw money at the problem. I'm here to offer you options. What kind of options? Can we talk inside? Adrian led her into the shop, offered her the cleanest chair he had, which wasn't saying much, and waited. Jennifer pulled out a folder. I've reviewed your citation list. Half of these violations are questionable at best. The electrical system is old but functional. The ventilation meets current standards even if it's not state-of-the-art. Several of these items are recommendations, not requirements, but they've been listed as mandatory. So the inspector lied? The inspector was encouraged to interpret regulations strictly. There's a difference. But here's the thing, you can challenge this, file an appeal, request a second inspection from a different municipality, argue that the citations exceed jurisdictional authority. That sounds expensive. It can be. Or, Jennifer leaned forward, you can accept my services pro bono. Adrian stared at her. Why would you do that? Because Selena asked me to. She's a friend, and more importantly, she's right. This is harassment masquerading as regulatory compliance. And I don't like bullies, Mr. Cole, especially not bullies who use the legal system as a weapon. Selena put you up to this. Selena told me about the situation. I chose to get involved. There's a difference. Adrian looked at the folder, at this woman who had no reason to help him except that someone he loved had asked. I can't afford to pay you. I'm not asking you to. Consider it a favor to Selena. And before you get proud about it, understand that I'm doing this because I want to, not because you need saving. What's the catch? Jennifer smiled. No catch. Just a very long, very tedious legal battle that I happen to find entertaining. So, what do you say? Want to fight back? Adrian thought about Jake's words, about not letting bullies see you scared, about the shop that had been his lifeline after Sarah died, the place where he'd rebuilt himself piece by piece. Yeah, he said. Let's fight back. The legal battle took 3 months. Jennifer was relentless, filing motions and appeals, dragging the citation process through every possible review. She found inconsistencies in the inspection, procedural errors in how the complaint was filed, evidence that Richard's company had made substantial donations to the regulatory agency right before the inspection was ordered. It wasn't enough to prove corruption, but it was enough to create doubt. Meanwhile, life continued in that strange way it does when everything's falling apart. But you still have to make breakfast and help with homework and pretend things are normal. Selena integrated into their lives more completely, not because she was trying to, but because there was nowhere else she wanted to be. She picked the kids up from school when Adrian was stuck at the shop, helped Emma with her science fair project about renewable energy, sat through Jake's baseball games even though his team lost almost every single one, built elaborate blanket forts with Sophie that took over the entire living room. Is Selena going to live with us forever? Sophie asked one night during the 10th reconstruction of Fort Sophie the Great. I don't know, sweetheart. Why? Because I want her to. She's nice and she makes good pancakes now. Adrian smiled. Selena had indeed gotten better at pancakes, though good was still a stretch. We'll see what happens. That's what you always say when you mean yes, but don't want to admit it yet. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't pay attention. He ruffled her hair, This fearless kid who saw right through him and wondered how he'd gotten so lucky with his children. Emma's question came a week later, more direct. Are you going to marry Selena? They were doing dishes together, a routine they'd fallen into after Selena had started staying over more nights than not. That's a pretty big question, Em. I'm a pretty smart kid. So are you? Adrian dried a plate, buying time. I don't know, maybe. Would that be okay with you? Emma was quiet for a moment, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary. I miss Mom. I know, I miss her too. But I also like Selena. Is that bad? Adrian set down the dish towel and crouched to Emma's level. It's not bad. It's human. You can miss your mom and care about Selena at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. What if Selena leaves like Mom did? There it was, the fear Adrian had been dancing around for months, now spoken out loud by his 8-year-old daughter. Mom didn't choose to leave, sweetheart. That was an accident. I know, but she still left. And what if Selena leaves too? Not because she wants to, but because something happens? Adrian pulled Emma into a hug. I can't promise she won't. I can't promise anything bad won't happen, but I can tell you that Selena loves us, all of us, and she's choosing to be here every single day. Is that enough? It's all we've got. Emma nodded against his shoulder, and Adrian held her, this kid who was too smart and too worried, and trying so hard to protect herself from more heartbreak. Jake's conversation happened differently. Adrian was under a car when his son appeared, lying down on the creeper next to him without asking. What are you doing? Adrian asked. Helping. You don't know anything about cars. Then teach me. So Adrian did, walking Jake through a simple brake job, letting him hand over tools and ask questions. They worked in silence for a while, the comfortable kind that came from just being together. Selena's okay, Jake said eventually. Yeah? Yeah, I mean, she's not Mom, but she doesn't try to be. She's just herself. That's good, right? I guess it's just weird, having someone new. I know it is. Do you love her? Adrian slid out from under the car, looked at his son. Yeah, I do. Like you loved Mom? Different, but yes. Jake nodded slowly, processing. Okay. Just okay? What else do you want me to say? I can't control who you love, and she makes you less sad. So yeah, okay. Adrian pulled his son into a quick, grease-stained hug. Thanks, buddy. Don't get sappy, it's weird. But Jake was smiling, just a little, and Adrian counted it as a win. The legal decision came in February. Jennifer called him at the shop, and Adrian could hear the satisfaction in her voice even before she spoke. We won. Adrian's hands went numb. What? The appeals board ruled in our favor, threw out 2/3 of the citations, reduced the rest to recommendations. You've got to fix the emergency exit. That one's legitimate, but everything else is optional. Total cost? About $5,000. $5,000, not $85. Not $85. You're clear, Adrian. The shop stays open. He sat down hard on his rolling stool. How did you? I did my job. And Richard Vale's company got sloppy, made the donations too close to the inspection date, left a paper trail that suggested coordination. Nothing we could prosecute, but enough to raise questions about the validity of the complaint. The board didn't want that heat, so they sided with you. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. Thanks, Selena. She's the one who asked me to get involved. And Adrian, this isn't over. Richard's not going to stop just because he lost one battle. I know. But you won this round, so celebrate it. Celebrate. He called Selena immediately, and she screamed so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. She showed up at the shop 20 minutes later, practically tackled him, and kissed him in front of Mrs. Patterson, who'd brought her Buick in for its monthly phantom noise investigation. We won, Selena said, laughing and crying at the same time. You won. Jennifer won. I just survived. No, we won. Together. That night, they told the kids over pizza at Angelo's. Sophie cheered. Emma smiled. Jake gave a subtle fist pump. And for the first time in months, Adrian felt like he could breathe fully. After the kids were in bed, Adrian and Selena sat on the porch with beer and the sound of early spring starting to creep into the air. Your father's going to try something else, Adrian said. Probably. Doesn't that scare you? terrifies me. But I'm tired of living scared, tired of letting him control my life even when I'm not part of his world anymore. Adrian took her hand. I've been thinking. That's dangerous. About us. About what comes next. Selena turned to look at him. What about it? We've been doing this for almost a year now. You've got your apartment, I've got my house, we're juggling schedules and pretending we're not basically living together already. Are you asking me to move in? I'm asking you to marry me. The words came out wrong, too blunt, too sudden, without the romance or planning he'd intended. But they were out now, hanging in the air between them. Selena stared at him. What? Adrian set down his beer, took both her hands. I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this, but I'm tired of waiting for the perfect moment, because there's never going to be a perfect moment. There's just us, right now, and I know I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So yeah, I'm asking you to marry me. Your kids, I already talked to them. They're on board. You talked to them before asking me. I needed to make sure. They've been through enough. I wasn't going to ask you if they weren't ready. And they're ready? Sophie wants you to wear a princess dress. Emma wants to know if you're going to hyphenate your name. Jake said, and I quote, "Whatever, just don't make me wear a tie." Selena laughed, a wet sound that was half sob. You're serious? Completely. We've only known each other for 11 months. Sarah and I knew each other for 6 weeks before I proposed. Sometimes you just know. This is insane. Probably, but I've done responsible and careful and measured. I've lived in fear of losing good things, and I'm done with that. I'd rather have you and risk everything than spend the rest of my life playing it safe. Selena stood up, paced the porch, and Adrian led her. Let her process, think, work through whatever was happening in her head. Finally, she turned back. I'm a mess. You know that, right? I'm still figuring out who I am without my father's company. I still have nightmares about board meetings. I still don't know how to properly fold fitted sheets. Nobody knows how to fold fitted sheets. That's a myth. I'm being serious. So am I. You're a mess. I'm a mess. My kids are wonderful, but they're also a handful. This life isn't glamorous or exciting. It's dishes and homework and broken water heaters. It's struggling to pay bills and worrying about the future and making it up as we go. And you want me to sign up for that? Permanently? I want you to sign up for us, for a life we build together, for something real. Selena crossed back to him, and in the porch light, Adrian could see tears streaming down her face. You're absolutely sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Then yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian stood, pulled her close, and kissed her like his life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. She was his second chance, his proof that good things could happen after devastating loss, his evidence that love was worth the risk. When they broke apart, Selena was laughing. We have to tell the kids. They're asleep. I don't care. We're waking them up. So they did, creeping into each bedroom and gently shaking 3 confused children awake. What's wrong? Emma asked, instantly alert. Nothing's wrong. Something's right. Selena was practically glowing. Your dad asked me to marry him. And? Sophie asked, sitting up. And I said yes, Sophie shrieked. Emma grinned. Jake smiled and said, cool, in that teenager in training way that meant he was actually happy but too cool to show it. They all ended up in the living room at midnight, eating ice cream and talking about what a wedding might look like. And Adrian watched his kids and his fiancée, plan and laugh and dream together. This was his family now, broken pieces that had somehow formed something whole. Richard Vale found out about the engagement through the society pages. Someone had seen Selena at the local jeweler, looking at wedding bands, and word had spread. By the time the news hit Chicago, it was everywhere. Billionaire heiress marrying small-town mechanic, the ultimate rags-to-riches romance, beauty, and the working class. The media ate it up. Richard's response came via a letter, delivered by courier to Adrian's shop. Adrian read it once, then called Selena. Your father wants to meet with both of us. Together. Why? He didn't say, just that it's important and time-sensitive. It's a trap. Probably, but I think we should go anyway. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between Briar Glen and Chicago, public enough that Richard couldn't make a scene. He was already there when they arrived, looking older, more tired, but his spine was still straight, his eyes still sharp. "Selina, Mr. Cole." They sat down and the silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Richard spoke. "I'm dying." The words landed like stones. "What?" Selina's voice was barely a whisper. "The heart attack did more damage than the doctors initially thought. I have maybe a year, probably less." "Dad, let me finish. I've spent the last few months trying to destroy your relationship, trying to force you back into the life I built for you. And I've realized something." He looked directly at Adrian. "I was wrong." Adrian waited, not trusting this. "I watched how you handled the shop citations, how you fought back without compromising your principles, how you protected my daughter while still respecting her independence. And I realized that you're not using her, you actually love her. I've been saying that for a year. I know, I didn't want to believe it, because if you actually loved her, it meant I'd been wrong about everything, wrong about what she needed, wrong about what would make her happy." Richard pulled out an envelope. "This is my will. I'm leaving the company to the board with instructions that Selina has first right of refusal if she ever wants to return, but I'm also leaving her a trust fund, separate from the company, no strings attached. Money she can use however she wants." "I don't want your money, Dad." "I know, but I'm giving it to you anyway, not as a bribe or a condition, just as a father who wants to make sure his daughter is taken care of when he's gone." Selina was crying now, and Adrian took her hand under the table. "Why now?" she asked. "Why the change?" "Because I'm out of time, and I'd rather spend what's left trying to make amends than continuing to fight battles I've already lost." Richard looked at Adrian again. "Take care of her, and take care of those kids of yours. From what I've heard, they're remarkable. You've been checking up on us?" "Of course I have. I'm a controlling bastard, Mr. Cole. That doesn't change just because I'm dying." Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. They talked for another hour, carefully, with lots of pauses and difficult silences. Richard asked about the wedding, about the kids, about Adrian's plans for the shop. It wasn't warm or easy, but it was real, progress. When they left, Selina was quiet all the way to the car. "You okay?" Adrian asked. "I don't know. I've spent so long being angry at him that I don't know how to do this, how to forgive him when he's running out of time." "You don't have to forgive him right now. Just take it one day at a time." "What if he dies and I still haven't forgiven him?" "Then you'll deal with that when it happens. But at least you'll know you tried." Selina leaned her head against the car window. "I thought I wanted him to suffer, to realize what he'd lost. But now that he actually has, I just feel sad." Adrian drove in silence, letting her process, and thought about how complicated family was, how you could hate someone and love them simultaneously. How forgiveness wasn't a switch you flipped, but a process you worked through. They got married in May. Nothing fancy, just a small ceremony at the park where Adrian had kissed Selina that first time, 11 months ago. Emma and Sophie were bridesmaids, wearing dresses Sophie had helped pick out because she'd insisted they needed sparkles. Jake was the ring bearer, handling the responsibility with the seriousness of a bomb defusal expert. Mrs. Henderson cried. Half the town showed up, curious and supportive and nosy in equal measure. Jennifer Strauss flew in from Chicago. Even Richard came, looking frail but present, sitting in the front row and crying quietly when Selina walked down the makeshift aisle. The ceremony was short. Adrian had written his own vows and promptly forgot them the moment Selina appeared, so he improvised. "I was going to say something profound about second chances and building new lives from broken pieces. But the truth is, you walked into my shop and I fell in love with you before I even knew your name. You fit into my chaotic life like you'd been there all along. You made my kids smile again. You made me believe in happiness after loss. So I promise to love you even when you burn pancakes, to support your dreams even when I don't understand them, to build a life with you that's ours, not anyone else's version of what we should be, and to never, ever let you forget that you're more than enough exactly as you are." Selina was crying before he finished, and her vows came out choked and beautiful. "I spent 30 years following a script someone else wrote, being who I was supposed to be. And then I met you. And for the first time, I wanted to write my own story. You gave me a family I'd never had, a home I'd never known I needed, 3 kids who've taught me more about love in 11 months than I learned in 30 years. So I promise to show up every day, even when it's hard, to choose us over comfort, to love your children like they're mine because they are, and to never stop being grateful that my car broke down in front of your shop. They kissed, and the small crowd cheered, and Sophie threw flower petals with such enthusiasm that half of them ended up in people's hair. The reception was at Angelo's because where else would it be? Cheap champagne and mediocre pizza, and a playlist Sophie had insisted on that was mostly Disney songs. Adrian danced with his new wife, with his daughters, even with Mrs. Henderson, who was surprisingly spry for her age. At one point, he found himself standing next to Richard, both of them watching Selena teach Sophie some complicated dance move. "She's happy," Richard said. "Yeah, she is. I was wrong about you." "You were." But I'm glad I was." Richard extended his hand. "Take care of my daughter, Mr. Cole." Adrian shook it. "That's the plan." Richard died 6 weeks later. It was peaceful, according to the hospital. He'd gone to sleep and simply hadn't woken up. Selena got the call at 3 in the morning and sat in their bed, staring at her phone like it might change the message. "He's gone," she said. Adrian held her while she cried. Not the desperate grief of losing someone you were close to, but the complicated sadness of losing someone you'd never fully reconciled with. Someone who'd caused immense damage but had tried, at the end, to make it right. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people, corporate executives and industry leaders, and people who'd known Richard as a titan of business. Selena delivered a eulogy that was honest and painful and real, talking about her father's brilliance and his cruelty, his ambition, and his blind spots, the way he'd built an empire but struggled to build a relationship. "He wasn't a perfect father," she said, "but he was mine. And in the end, he tried. That has to count for something." The will reading came a week later. True to his word, Richard had left the company to the board with a right of refusal for Selena. He'd also set up a trust fund, not billions, but enough that she'd never have to worry about money. Enough to give the kids college funds, to expand the shop if Adrian wanted, to build whatever life they dreamed of. "What do you want to do?" Adrian asked that night. Selena was quiet for a long time. "I want to start a foundation. Use some of the money to help other people escape situations like mine. People trapped in family businesses or careers they hate but don't know how to leave. Give them resources, support, a way out. That's perfect. And I want to finish my degree, the psychology one I started. Maybe become a therapist. Help people work through family trauma. Also perfect. And I want to have a baby." Adrian's brain short-circuited. "What?" Selena turned to look at him, vulnerable and hopeful. "I want to have a baby with you, if you want that. I know 3 kids is already a lot, and we're still figuring things out, but yes. Yes? Yes, I want that. I want everything with you." She kissed him, and in that kiss was every promise they'd made and every dream they'd built, and every impossible thing that had somehow become real. Their daughter was born the following spring. They named her Sarah, after Adrian's first wife, because Selena insisted and Adrian cried when she suggested it. Sarah Grace Cole came into the world screaming and perfect, and Emma, Jake, and Sophie fell in love with their baby sister immediately. "She's so small," Sophie whispered, holding her with the careful intensity of a 6-year-old who'd been promoted to big sister. "You were that small once," Adrian said. "No way. I was born big and strong." Emma rolled her eyes. "You were actually smaller than she is." "Was not." "Was too." Adrian and Selena exchanged glances, smiling at the familiar bickering that meant everything was normal and good. That night, after the kids were asleep and baby Sarah was finally, blessedly quiet in her bassinet, Adrian and Selena collapsed on the couch. "We have 4 kids," Selena said, sounding dazed. "We really do." "That's insane." "Completely." "I love it." "Me too." They sat there in the wreckage of their living room, toys everywhere, dishes in the sink, laundry that needed folding, and Adrian thought about how far they'd come. From a broken-down Maserati to this, from 2 people running from pain to a family built on choice and trust and showing up every single day. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked. "Giving up the company, the money, the life you had?" Selena looked at him like he'd asked if the sky was green. Are you serious? I'm just checking. Adrian, I gave up a cage. I didn't give up anything real. Everything real is right here. Even with the chaos and the noise and the fact that we haven't had a full night's sleep in 3 days? Especially because of that. She leaned her head on his shoulder. This is what I always wanted. I just didn't know it. A messy, loud, imperfect life with people who actually loved me. Not the version of me that's useful or successful or impressive. Just me. Adrian kissed her hair. You're pretty impressive. I mean the messy parts. The parts that burn dinner and don't know how to change diapers and still sometimes cry about my father. Those parts are impressive too. They sat there until baby Sarah woke up crying, and then they took turns walking her around the living room, and Adrian watched his wife sing softly to their daughter and thought about how lucky he was, how impossibly, ridiculously lucky. Years passed in the way they do when you're busy living. The shop expanded, not because of Selena's money, but because word got around about the guy who'd fought City Hall and won, and suddenly people were driving from 3 towns over to get their cars fixed. Adrian hired 2 mechanics, then 3, then converted the lot next door into additional bays. Selena finished her degree and opened a small practice in town, specializing in family therapy and career transitions. She helped people navigate toxic family dynamics, find courage to leave situations that were destroying them, build lives that were theirs instead of someone else's expectations. Emma went to college on a full scholarship, studying engineering because she'd decided to build better renewable energy systems. Jake followed 2 years later, surprising everyone by choosing literature, saying he wanted to teach kids like him, the quiet ones who felt too much. Sophie was still in high school, already talking about medical school, or Broadway, or maybe both, because why limit yourself? And Sarah grew up surrounded by siblings who adored her, parents who'd chosen each other every single day, and a town that had watched her parents' love story unfold and claimed it as their own. On their 10th anniversary, Adrian and Selena drove back to the park where they'd gotten married. It was late afternoon, golden light filtering through the trees, and they walked the same path they'd walked a decade ago when everything was new and uncertain and terrifying. 10 years, Selena said. Feels like both forever and yesterday. I know what you mean. She took his hand. Do you remember what you said in your vows, the improvised version? Not really. I was pretty nervous. You said I fit into your life like I'd been there all along, and I remember thinking that was the nicest thing anyone had ever said to me. It was true then. It's still true now. They sat on the same bench where Adrian had kissed her that first time, where he'd told her she was enough exactly as she was, where they'd started building something neither of them had been looking for. I love you, Selena said. I know I say it all the time, but I need you to know I mean it every time. I love you and our chaotic life and our 4 kids and our weird little town. I love that we're not perfect, but we're real. I love that you still burn toast and I still can't fold fitted sheets and we're still figuring it out together. Adrian pulled her close. I love you too. I love that you took a chance on a mechanic with 3 kids and a mortgage. I love that you make terrible pancakes but keep trying. I love that you chose this life when you could have had anything. This is anything. It's everything. They stayed there until the sun started to set, painting everything in shades of orange and gold, and Adrian thought about how life worked sometimes, how the worst moments could lead to the best ones, how loss could make space for love, how 2 broken people could build something whole. Selena's car had broken down in front of his shop on a random Tuesday afternoon, and somehow that moment of mechanical failure had led to this: 10 years of marriage, 4 kids, a life neither of them had planned but both of them had chosen. It wasn't the life Selena's father had wanted for her. It wasn't the safe, careful life Adrian had built after loss. It was better. It was theirs. And as they walked back to their car, the practical sedan they'd bought when baby Sarah was born, nothing fancy but reliable, Adrian realized he'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, stopped bracing for disaster, stopped protecting himself from happiness. He'd finally learned what his late wife had tried to teach him, what Selena had shown him through action instead of words. Love was worth the risk, every single time.